The day of the Istanbul negotiations turned out to be extremely difficult for all global media and channels. They had to do everything possible to avoid that one word, which could truly describe the Russian delegation in Istanbul. That word is scum. Yes, scum, petty, crooked, and inarticulate, but undoubtedly scum. Imitating the style of the boss who sent them. The scum were, of course, brazen, pompous, and talkative. Well, the Russian delegation announced that Russia intends to go on killing and looting for countless more years. To do what is called, the short break between the first and the second 30 days. They, the Russians, see no point in it, since in that time they can easily manage to steal something else and occupy more territory. Medinsky was smirking there, acting clever, throwing around fake quotes from Bismarck and Napoleon he'd picked up on the internet, reminding Ukrainians that Russians, by virtue of their supposed greatness and their victory gene, have every right to lawlessness and to wiping out any nation to the root. Of course, they were being egged on from Moscow, including the guardians of Russian values like Simonian and other Solovyovs. Well, to be objective, I suppose it's worth mentioning the bright side of the Russian delegation. There was one, too. They didn't spit out sunflower seed shells, and they sat on chairs, not squatting on their haunches. But probably only because they were afraid of that grim, heavy-set Turk who stayed in the hall to make sure that the guests from Russia didn't carve three-letter words into the tables or relieve themselves on the buildings of the historic and precious Dolmabahce Palace. Right, but in general, of course, it was very painful and very hard for millions of people to watch this public demonstration of the impunity of evil. And it must be said that indeed the unanimity shown by the Russian delegation was truly unique. That is, their views really are the same, as identical as the sponge in an ancient Roman latrine. And similar in smell, too. So we understand that this big Istanbul mess was absolutely pointless. It was nonsense. Perhaps in the future some kind of truce will be reached, but the Russians, of course, hope that this truce will be bloody enough and in no way disrupt the familiar nightmare of war. We know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in response to the Russian delegation's proposal to meet with him, sadly leafed through the CIA dossier on the Russian delegation in Istanbul and delicately, very delicately, remarked that their level was clearly insufficient for any kind of communication with them. And the Kremlin Dracula, yes, he got scared, locked himself in a bunker, and instead of going himself, sent a team of political dwarfs to Istanbul